The night is almost gone, and the day is near. Therefore, let us lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Thank you for tuning in to the episode 1 of the Armored Podcast. I'm your co-host, Hayden, and this is Nathan Williams joining me. And this is our first episode. What are we covering today?
Our first episode, I think we're going to consist it of we're titled it Proving the Bible. So we're going to start with some stuff that is, thank you, that is not in Scripture. So Hayden's going to lead us in that far, but yeah.
Yeah. You want to touch on what our objective is through this podcast, what our trajectory in the future, what we're kind of trying to build?
Yeah, so our hope is that this podcast reaches a pretty casual Christian audience, hoping that some of you might be new to the faith or something like that, so it's not going to be too in-depth for everyone, but it will be a good casual listen. So if you're looking for something to tune in at work or just around the house, give you a casual listen, that's what this is going to be for. We're going to have topical studies, maybe some verse-by-verse studies, and also likely some question and answers. So the hope is that we'll get some questions from you guys, potentially some students from classes that we're teaching here, and we'll answer them here if they're long enough to make a podcast episode out of, or answer a few in one.
Yeah, it'd be sweet to get some question and answers going, and we'll throw some information at the end where you can send that armoredpod@gmail.com, and then follow us on socials, and we'll make sure if you have a question, something you want us to cover, send it to us and we'll tackle it.
Yeah, we're going to put all of our contacts, like Instagram, Spotify, all that kind of stuff at the end. So you'll see that at the end.
Sweet. So I think a good place to start is proving the Bible. I had Nathan's notes in front of me when I started building my notes, and it kind of got me thinking. So I wrote down kind of where my mind was going on what you had made up already. So I'm just going to read my opening thought. So first off, the Bible is not a book. It is 66 books written by 40 different people in over 1,500 years. There's never been a book like this in history, right? So does this prove that it's the Word of God? No, it's just an impressive book, right?
It does prove that it has some credibility behind it.
Right, maybe it's worth considering. Mm-hmm. So for hundreds of years, they've used the Bible to find archaeological sites, people, civilizations, and even kings and rulers. Still, this doesn't make it the Word of God, but again, it's probably worth considering. Mm-hmm. It's historically accurate. It proves real people and places existed, and they wrote down what they saw. Mm-hmm. And so let's keep digging into it. The first Greek translation, I got ahead of myself already. So then Jesus comes along and fulfills all 300 prophecies found in the book. That's impossible. 300 prophecies. I think of like ancient times, prophecies were really important to like picking kings and different kingdoms and that kind of thing. And they may fulfill like 1 or 2 prophecies, right? That they had preset maybe 20 years ahead of time. This is 300 prophecies, 250 years before he was even born.
Right. I put that in perspective of like a law, for example. There is a lot more than 300 laws. There might not be, but I don't keep 300 laws. I don't even know the 300 laws. So the fact that there's a man who could fulfill 300 prophecies, which were listed well before his time, some might even have forgot. I think one thing we have to keep in consideration when we talk about Jesus and the Jewish culture is most of the laws and prophecies are memorized. They're not written down. I mean, they are, but they're not open to the public. Very few people have access to these things. So the fact that Jesus actually filled 300 of them is that much more impressive, knowing that he might not even have access to these. Obviously, based off our religion, he's God, so he knows. But to the random person, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, it would have been people like the Pharisees, people like religious Jews, practicing Jews that would have noticed these things. That, hey, I remember reading that.
Yeah.
He did that.
That'd be a great idea for a podcast one day to go through all of them, all the prophecies he fulfilled. And
that might be more than an hour. We could do it.
Or we'll make it a part by part episodes.
Yeah, we could do it. It's a good one.
Yeah.
On the list.
Yeah.
All right, so 300 prophecies in 250 years before he's even born. So how could they know where he would be born or that he would be crucified when Roman crucifixions weren't even in existence as capital punishment yet. Again, we see this in Old Testament times, hundreds of years before Jesus is born, that he's going to be crucified, and it wasn't even around yet.
Right.
We also see that he was going to be portrayed for 30 pieces of silver 250 years before it happened. That's prophesied. We can look at all this later, but just as a quick overview, and so all these things, all these prophecies, all these things are fulfilled, still doesn't make it the word of God. I think it makes a pretty good argument that we're getting close.
If nothing else, the history that Jesus lived is 90%, I would say 100% true.
Right. It looks like, hey, this guy had some credibility.
Right. Which I think we'll get into it later, but most religious figures consider Jesus to at least be a prophet. If you don't believe in Christianity, likely chances you believe that Jesus did exist, but you don't quite believe he raised on the third. I think that's the biggest difference with
right. Yeah, so then ultimately he proves it when he says he's going to go and die. He tells his followers he's going to go die, but he's also going to raise from the dead in 3 days.
Right.
Nobody's done that before. Then he does prove it, right? He dies. All his followers disappear. They don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Right.
Some of them are grieving. But regardless, this whole Jesus thing didn't work out. We're done.
Right, which Jesus prophesies in the New
right.
Testament. So.
Yeah. So they all leave. They go back to fishing. They go back to their secular jobs.
Right.
Then he proves it when he comes back to life, and he comes to see his disciples again. And something happens where they're willing to give up their lives again and go be martyred for him.
Right.
I'd say if you put all this information together, that proves with the Bible that the story is true, that the Bible is true, that it's recorded for our reading, that it's not just some man-made book. I think it's got more credibility. So let's walk through proving it without the Bible.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hit on that last thing you just said. I know a lot of people I've seen all over social media and other kind of stream services like that people have a problem with Christ. It's like, how do you know he raised on the third? And most Christians today, at least for me, I believe that the reason I think that happened is because there's, who would give their life for something that didn't happen? Especially as many as did. I don't know if it was 500, but no, over 500 saw him after, is what's recorded. But at least for the 12 disciples, they all gave their lives putting it down that Jesus did rise on the third day. So I'm putting my faith in those people.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the book that tells me.
And it's not like it was an easy task to just put away your job, put away your families, because economically, they couldn't afford to at this time. They were paying taxes to the Romans. Right. Everything was against them. They were slaves to society, basically. They couldn't afford to just up and leave everything, but they did.
Yeah. I will say, though, there is a slightly different context to our understanding of, I think, rabbis and teachers and students today than it was back then. I learned recently through something I'm working through is that apparently becoming a student to a rabbi is like the biggest deal in the world to a Jew. So they go through training the first year where their test is like they have to memorize the entire Torah, which is the first four books of the Bible, and their tests are essentially like the guy starts memorizing or he starts quoting something and he stops. And as soon as he stops, the student's got to pick it up and keep going for as long as he says.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like a ridiculous test. And as soon as you're able to pass that, you pass that first school, which I think, according to the site that I was looking at, only like less than 1% of people get to do that, especially the Jews in this time. So now, mind you, they go home and they work with their parents. They do whatever trade that their parent is doing. And that's where all of our disciples come from, is they didn't quite make the cut. So they are going home and Jesus picks them up there. But to continue on, after they go here, then they have to memorize all of the books of the prophets and all those things. So then they have the same kind of test. And only then, once you memorize all the context in the books that they have, then you're able to study under a rabbi.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's an insane thing to be able to get to do that. So the fact that there's a rabbi walking down and being like, hey, come follow me, that's like a golden ticket.
No prerequisites, just come follow me.
Yeah, that's like a golden ticket to, the dream life. So I know a lot of people at least I had a problem with, like, how can you just drop everything like that? Like, that's not that easy to just
Makes sense, huh?
put your fishing poles on the ground and just go. But that's a once in a lifetime opportunity that most people are never going to get. So now, granted, that's not like everyone would choose this, because we see throughout the scriptures that there's a lot of people that don't choose to follow Jesus when he asks them to. Like Nicodemus, for example, he's got a lot of things already. He doesn't really want to leave. But granted, he is a rabbi, so he's kind of got his life.
He doesn't want to be a student again. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
That makes sense.
But that's why, at least for me, it gave me a lot of context to understand why they were so willing to just leave. You know.
Yeah, that's a neat piece of history. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Are these people that were studying under a rabbi? Is that to become a rabbi? Is what they were studying for, or is it just for more knowledge?
I would think so. I feel like I didn't read anything that was directly towards that or against that, but I would assume that's the
trajectory they're probably headed.
Yeah. Which I can't remember. It's been a while since I looked at it, but I remember it was like less than 200 of them were even like actual disciples. Yeah, so there was not too many rabbis and not too many disciples.
Interesting.
And most of the rabbis and Sadducees that we see or that we read about in Scripture were all like in the family line, so they just kept inheriting the things. Especially the Sadducees, that was like the holy priesthood was their family line.
Right. Interesting tidbit. That was a side note. That wasn't even in our notes.
Yeah. Hopefully we have more of those. It helps when I... are we allowed to shout out other podcasts?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I listen to the Bema podcast, if you guys haven't already, and that's where I get a lot of my Jewish context from, because the Marty Solomon he went to Israel after he got a Bible degree in the U.S., and he went to Israel and studied under a rabbi for a few years. So he's like directly learned all of the traditions, all the history. Huh. He's very involved in the Greek and the Hebrew, so it's a huge resource for me and a lot of things I learned. So I hear him say stuff, and I was like, whoa, I got to go look that up. So I go and do some research on it and whatnot, and typically I find out he's right.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Bang off, you're listening. You have a great podcast. So definitely not listening.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. We'll get there.
Well, where do you want to jump to next?
Are we on the Proving Bible?
Yeah. Yeah, so in my opening statement, I kind of mentioned that there's 66 books written by 40 different people in 1,500 years. You've got on your notes, this includes shepherds, kings, priests, scholars, fishermen, prophets. It wasn't just scribes. It wasn't just rabbis. It wasn't. It was a collection of people, unlikely people, writing the Bible,
spread across hundreds of years. Not to mention, I think too, with such a diverse group of writers, you often have, at least from what I understand, is that you're not really pushing a certain agenda. If someone writes one book, they have full control over the agenda of the book is pushing. But there's so many different types of writers here that there's no way that, it's some plot or some scheme to throw everybody off or anything like that.
Which I think kind of proves the inspired aspect of it, because someone like a shepherd wouldn't be necessarily educated. Mm-hmm. A Jewish shepherd probably would have been going to synagogues, but in a synagogue, they kind of just read the Torah. Like that's all they're really doing at this time. They would have just been reading the Torah. There wouldn't have been like a sermon we're used to, where they're going to take a verse of the Torah and lay it out and start teaching a lesson on it. So these people would have been somewhat uneducated, scholar-wise.
Right. I don't believe I have it in these notes, so I almost don't want to say it. But I know I've made a thing, because I found out that how the Jewish synagogue kind of worked. I don't remember the exact order, so please do not rail me if I get it wrong. But I know in there, they kind of have their prayer. It's similar to how we kind of construction. They have a prayer, they have a reading of the Torah and the prophets. Like they have a reading of both. And then somebody who's educated can speak on those verses. So it's not like someone prepared a whole sermon and came to the class and presented it, but it was more so of that there's a verse being read and somebody speaks on it. So it's like you get a little bit of word, you get a little bit of prayer, and I think I learned this when I was doing the women's study, because the women sit in a different place with the children.
Right.
So it's in my notes somewhere. Just don't remember
Yeah.
what it was.
But I think the point being, like, it was inspired.
Right.
Because these people that wrote the Bible, most of them weren't authors. They weren't used to writing letters, weren't used to writing books, especially this detailed. So I think it leans into that inspired word of God. Doesn't prove it, but I think it starts to.
Yeah, it's credible.
Yeah.
It's history at the end of the day. Yeah, so we can jump into the safeguards.
Sure.
Oh, the Essenes. I was trying to remember. I was like, what was my notes on the Essenes? But the Essenes, I don't believe I've told you about Essenes, have I?
I don't think we've talked about it, no.
They are one of the coolest groups of people I've ever read on. So the Essenes, they were people who, whenever the Greco-Roman world was coming together, essentially like the Herodians were playing in, so this ideal of like entertainment and theater, all these things were coming into play again. They were a group of people that saw this and was like, this is not God's way. So they decided that their best course of action was to isolate themselves, but be so devoted to the text that they almost didn't interact with people. This is their downfalls. They didn't interact with people. But their method of recording scripture is mind-blowing. So they sit like this, essentially, and they've got a guy behind them and a guy behind you. And one of them's reading the scripture, and he's saying it word by word, and you're writing it down. So if I'm just opened up to Mark 6:24. I would say she. You would write down she. Two guys behind us would go check. And like every single word, starting at the beginning and through all they got. So that's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And every time they hit the word God, they stopped, and they got up, and they washed themselves clean. So like there's some books in the Old Testament that you'd see and be like, man, they got up a lot.
Yeah. I don't think there's a way to prove it, but I've heard a lot of scholars believe that John kind of came from the Essenes.
Yeah.
So and we don't have
It's
anything,
based off his like
his lifestyle,
actions,
yeah,
those kind of things.
But
it's a group of people I've never heard of until I did the research on them, and they're so I think they operated in the desert for the most part, which is kind of crazy to think about because where's the water coming from? Because at the same time, they didn't believe you could bathe yourself with just any water. It had to be God's water, so it had to be flowing water, which means there had to be a river or creek nearby. So they had to be located in very specific locations so they could do this. But they were so devoted to the text that, like that's very credible.
yeah.
I would trust somebody who'd spent that kind of time and effort on the daily doing that to have this.
Yeah, and if John did come from the Essenes, it makes sense why he's so knowledgeable, right? Like we know he's cousins of Jesus, but his religious background is more profound than others that we see in the New Testament.
Right.
His education level in the scriptures is well beyond where we see other apostles, other figures in the Bible pick up.
Yeah, very true. And then my second note is the abundance of early text allowing us to ascertain the original word. I think it's already there. We didn't have the Armor podcast. Place to pull it up.
We'll pull it up when we're done.
Yeah, we'll pull it up after this. So this isn't exactly what I'm talking about, but this does play in, and it plays into the next point as well. So I'll kind of shove them together. From what I've read up on and through my studies and things like that, the Bible has the most. What's the word I'm looking for?
Cross references.
No, not cross references. They're like old documents to prove what we read today is true. So like,
right.
So there's so many copies of the writings of David, for example, that we've found. So to see that many, we can prove that David was a writer, or our writings of Moses and Genesis and Torah. Like it's so every copy we have is so close to being identical that it's proving the validity of the word.
Even stuff like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found so much later. I mean, we found those not very long ago.
Right.
I don't know how long ago, but within my lifetime,
Yeah.
I believe they were found. And they were completely accurate to what we have recorded for us today.
Yeah.
And they've been missing for how long? Thousands of years.
I can't believe things like that still are here, haven't just decomposed by now. It's interesting you say that. I have a coworker that we got talking about some stuff like this, and he brought up how, Christians will listen to the Bible but nothing else. And while that's true, I think sometimes Christians will. I think we should be more open to reading these other texts, not because we're going to base our whole lives off them, but to read them as they're still history at the end of the day. These are things that very well could have happened. So just because it's not in the Bible doesn't mean you need to act like it never happened. Because we don't treat that with other forms of history. So the Dead Sea Scrolls is one of them. They don't not every single word out of that completely agrees, but that's some things you find out of like the book of Enoch, for example. A character in the Bible, but it doesn't quite make sense with the Bible, so they didn't put it in there.
Right.
Doesn't mean that there isn't some truth to it, probably some lies to it. Like there's no way to tell. Yeah. But this is the only thing that we believe is completely inspired by God, so there is no fault in this. That's why Enoch's not in it, because it creates faults.
Right. And it doesn't, not to say that it contradicts it, but it's not written in the same context as the rest of the Bible.
Right, yeah. Next point is the fulfilled prophecies. We've kind of already hit on this, and this picture here shows us a great picture of what we're talking about. A lot of these cross references are things that, especially in these Gospels with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is Jesus referencing back when he fulfills a prophecy. So
this goes back to those 300 plus prophecies that were fulfilled.
Right. Yeah. Can you think of any of them that are specific?
Specific to what?
Anything, like just a prophecy that Jesus fulfilled.
Yeah, like all of Isaiah. I guess not all of Isaiah, but a big part of Isaiah. He's talking about that this person, this Messiah, is going to come and he's going to be hung on the cross. He's going to go through the suffering. He kind of word for word talks about what Jesus is going to say on the cross. And,
yeah.
If it's something we could look into, and the same cross references made in Psalms, right? Psalms 22.
Yeah.
Talk about Jesus on the cross.
The one where Jesus is on the cross and he says, "Lord, Lord, why have you forsaken me?" Right. I think that's Psalm 23, is it not?
I believe it's 22.
22. But either way, it's a psalm, because a lot of people have a problem with that verse, and they say, "How is Jesus God if, how is Jesus the Son of God if his God has forsaken him?" Like, that's not a faithful God. And if you read it in context, he's quoting David and something he said in a psalm.
Yeah, it's Psalms chapter 22. The whole chapter is talking about Jesus on the cross, and Jesus talking about the suffering he's going through, and all this is well over 200 years from Jesus' birth. I think the verse you were looking for is 19, but "You, O Lord, do not be far from me. O my strength, hasten to help me. Deliver me from the sword." I believe that's what you're looking for, and I might have a different version than what you're quoting. But
mine's just verse 1. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? So far from the cries of anguish. That's just verse 1. So he's just quoting a psalm instead of, Now, obviously, I think we also believe that God was not in that moment because God is sinless. So, and at that moment, Jesus is bearing the world's sin. So God cannot be physically right there at the same time.
Yeah. And direct reference to Matthew 45 says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And this is 200 something years after we just read in Psalms.
Right.
And two different writers, two totally different, unrelated people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Another note about the writers, I don't know if you ever talked to this or heard anything about this, but apparently there's a theory that there's like 3 to 4 writers of Isaiah. It's not just one.
I've heard that. Yeah.
I've heard that they would bank a lot of things on there's at least 3 different writers. I think a lot of people say 4, just based off the language, is that it switches and sounds different way. But I'm not that contextual.
I'm not either. I've heard the argument too that like Isaiah is like an inconsistent character. Like he, maybe that's the wrong word, but I don't know what word I'm looking for. But like he has different personalities that he shows.
Like in a crazy way, or
not a crazy way, but I think I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, you got to think about it too. It's like if this is Isaiah recording through his whole life. I mean, I've changed so much in my life. So if it's, let alone like a year of my life. So my whole thought on life, my writing style could completely change in a year. So if Isaiah's writing this in a few years, then, it makes sense that it sounds different. Yeah. But I think a lot of people agree that he had like disciples of some sort and they picked up somewhere and wrote stuff. And
yeah, that's like the book of Acts. Luke wasn't there for a lot of it, but he's going to people recording the stories that he's gotten back, the reports he's gotten back, recording it. He wasn't there, but he's writing from someone else's perspective.
Yeah. Have you heard of the reason or why Acts is separate from Luke? Mm-mm. So, now I don't know how true this is, but it'd be really awesome if it was true. It's from what I've read and heard about it, it's that Luke was so long that because they wrote on scrolls, they didn't have like books, so they had ran out of room on the scroll, so they opened up another one and just kept going.
It makes sense. Being Luke is he would have been pretty confident in writing stuff. I mean, he was a not a doctor. What's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. Truthfully,
he was a doctor.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
I can't remember what they called him in his time, but he was essentially a doctor, and so he would have been used to recording notes. He was been in books. It was something he was an educated person,
right?
So it makes sense.
Did Luke write Acts or no?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, I'm pretty sure that's true, but I don't want to say that.
Yeah.
We can next go to the fundamental truths. I know a lot of these we see online today with our like campus preachers or like the kids these days, or not the kids, but like Bryce Hall that goes around talking to people on the street. This is the kind of things I hit on a lot, so this is where I got this from. It's just the principles of love, good, evil, etc. Like these moral absolutes that go around that without scripture or religion, those things kind of go away.
Yeah.
One of the conversations I had with my coworker was about these kind of things and how he said that I'm not going to say names or anything because he obviously doesn't need his information out there, but there's people he knows.
We need to know his address.
There's people that he knows that they don't have a faith of any sorts and they live a much different life and not in a positive way. I would think that the moral truths kind of steer me to live in a much more happy way. So, things that happen to me or bad stuff that happens, I because of Christ and God, I can have hope and faith that knowing that like this is a trial that I can get through because I believe that my God will never put me through something I can't get through. Another example is like, I just made this move here. I'm out like a lot of money from what I had. So most people will be like pretty stressed out that they've lost so much money on a move, but I know it's okay because I believe that my God provides. So right. I know that even if I lose all that doing something, I'm coming here to do a good thing and serve God. So I know that I'll be covered. And that just gives me a lot of hope and confidence in my life that I can always apply. So that's like the good and those kind of things and the love part. So it's like, I think this is kind of weird, but I know that there's a lot of people that have very messed up minds. So they will do things out of love that we would not classify as love.
Right.
I just think that's because there's no moral absolute for them. So if there is a moral absolute written on paper that to follow, those kind of things make a lot more sense and keep us kind of in a little bubble.
Well, something that's really cool too, like if you want to separate Jesus and God, because we get to see a lot about God through Jesus in the New Testament. But if you want to look at the Old Testament, look at just God's character. And like you see the love, you see the justice, you see these moral ethics of God that he's put into us that we strive for. You get to see that character in God displayed with interacting with his people.
Yeah. And
I liked how you worded it fundamental truth. So is the topic for this point.
Yeah.
And you think about like even our laws, and I think you can go back to like kings and queens times, right? Where a lot of their beliefs was because it was from their God telling them, here's moral truths, here's our fundamental truths. So a lot of their rules, granted, they used their power incorrectly and bent those truths, but everything that they would say goes back to biblical truths, biblical characters of God that he's told us to have.
Which I believe are listed in Numbers, or is it Leviticus? The Levitical laws? Yeah, it's Leviticus, where they God gives them a list of rules to follow. And even Moses, when he gives the Ten Commandments, it's like God gives us a set of things that are supposed to help us. And I think people who follow those things typically live a much better life.
Even our founding fathers, you go back to our nation of America being founded, it was on principles of God. It was on these things that God said was good for us.
On the dollar, it says, "In God we trust."
At one point in time.
At one point in time.
But it all points back to God's truths, God's fundamental values that he's instilled in us.
Yeah. The next point, we kind of already talked about it. It says, if applied, one's life will improve. I think that's true in any way. I think Judges lists it very well. At the end of Judges, if you haven't read Judges, guys, it's a crazy book, and it tells you exactly what's going to happen if God goes out of the picture. And at the end, it says all these things happened. Actually, I'd love to flip to it because it's a great verse. Let me find it.
Yeah, the Old Testament gets a bad rap, especially that section of the Old Testament of, man, it's just all about God's rules and God's, like, all of God's people, and it's so boring. It's hard to read through, but apply like Judges to America.
Judges, man.
If we stop following God's rule, we're going to look just like Judges did.
Yeah. I need to find this verse.
What are you after?
It's like the last verse in Judges. It just kind of says, like, all this was left to man's, will, and this is what happens. Yeah, okay. So the last verse, verse 25 of chapter 21, it says, "In those days Israel had no king, and everyone did as they saw fit." And I think today's world is very much as we see fit. It's all sinner-based. It's all me, this. So I think if there's anything that we can reference about what happens if God's not in the picture, is that that stuff happens. In this last chapter, just to give you guys context, essentially, like, the Israelites have a bunch of, is it clans? Is it the right word?
Tribes.
Yeah, tribes. And one of them, they totally screwed over and killed a bunch of people. So they killed another group of people to make it even, and then took all their wives and children to kind of repopulate the group that they messed up. So they're trying to make it equal, but there's just more fighting everywhere. And It's all twisted and messed up, and that's because we did as we saw fit. So if we apply our biblical truths and keep God in our lives, your life will improve, and it won't be this bad. Hopefully. Yeah. My next point. The universe points to a creator. Life doesn't come from non-life. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
I don't know. I wasn't as into the whole evolution thing growing up because when I was homeschooled, so kind of got to choose what I was taught. So I got to stay out of all of the evolution stuff. But
I know there's probably a lot of homeschoolers that are listening.
Yeah.
They're a very large population within the Christian Church of Christ world.
For good reason. But I know you probably grew up being force-fed evolution and stuff, and that's the first thing that comes to life or comes to mind when you're talking about coming from non-life. To me is evolution, and just it's very flawed argument, I think, of how they pitch evolution. And,
let's hit you with a blockbuster question here. So
on the
life
spot.
doesn't come from non-life. Then what came first? The chicken or the egg?
The chicken. God created the chicken.
What if evolution happened to create the egg for the chicken?
Then God created the egg first.
See, that's my thought, is that the chicken is a breed of two species. So the egg came first. Because there was no list of chicken on Noah's Ark.
I'm going to need to see book, chapter, and verse for this.
Anyway, back to the...
Yeah, so I don't know where you're headed with that life doesn't come from non-life, but...
Yeah, I think that's referencing all the scientific stuff about the Big Bang Theory. Is like, we didn't just come from nothing, and if we did, it's because there's a creator behind it. So like people say, oh well, where did Earth come from? Well, or the universe or whatever it is, and they say, well, it was a combined dust ball that blew up and created everything. I was like, okay, well, where did the dust come from? And it's like, well, planets, or the planets, and it just keeps going back. And then the science has brought up to the Big Bang Theory, and that's something that happened, and everything came to be, which is possible.
But
to
created
me,
it?
is that something made it go boom.
Right.
That's my thought on it. And which I saw, I don't know his name. I can't remember his name. But he asked the question. He was like, well, if you're going to, if a Christian's going to say, well, God, there can't be if there's creation, there has to be a creator, then who created God? And I was like, well, you got me, I guess, because the only thing we would know to say is he's always been there. Like, there's never not been God. So nothing created God. It was just all that, like Genesis 1, in the beginning was God. God is just the beginning.
Yeah.
So I think that's my only, I don't think I have any other.
Yeah. I think that having Genesis, God telling us how things were created.
Yeah.
And even looking like Job blows my mind away. Look at Job. Like, God's telling Job about these things that he created.
Shout out Brittany on Job. She's listening. We had a call about Job the other day.
Nice. But Job is like, he's arguing with God about these things, and God starts telling him, were you there when I did this, when I did this? All these scientific things that we still are just barely able to scratch the surface of proving, right?
Right.
With our technology we have today, it's recorded thousands of years ago about how these things work.
Crazy.
Disprove that.
Yeah.
Like,
More.
even if you want to call it an uninspired book,
Yeah.
that the Bible's just a man-made written book, fine. But prove that to me. How in the world
There's no way.
can we prove that?
I think all religion aside, the Bible has to be historical text. That is true. You know, especially being that I know we didn't hit on this earlier, but there's more proof within the Bible as old manuscripts. That's the word I'm looking for.
Nailed it.
That was the word. Is manuscripts. But there's more of that than our writers are things for Plato or other Greek, philosophers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was gonna look at that when we're gonna look into prominent historians to close here in a bit, and
yeah, we'll hit that.
we'll throw some of that in there. I've got some interesting things to bring up. I think we are on point 6.
The fact that they can only work if it's designed. Yeah, we already hit on that last point.
Yeah, so I think we want to walk
Archaeological
through.
findings.
Yeah,
Cannot disprove the Bible mostly historically accurate book ever. I don't know why there's such a big space there. This is what I found online. So I didn't proof check everything, so I just found a list and I copied it and I threw it on here. So we can hit these verses, but I'm not gonna say that I have like context or words to say about them if you want to.
yeah. I looked into it a little bit too. I guess we can go down the list here. Like the Pilate inscription of Judea, we can see that in John 18:29, Hezekiah's tunnel, 2 Chronicles 22:30, Taylor Prism, all these things that we've found because of the Bible. Is kind of what I gathered from it. Is these things were things that archaeologists were trying to find and didn't have a lot of information to go find them. And a lot of these came from people looking at the Bible. And like Hezekiah's tunnel is one that I really like. 2 Chronicles 22:30. But it came from these people not being able to find these places and coming to the Bible and using the Bible to find the area. And then they actually find something like Hezekiah's tunnel that they were trying to find.
Yeah,
and they can prove it with the Bible.
I'll throw this in there while you're looking for the verse, but we didn't write it on here, but there's that most recent thing of people think that they found Noah's Ark, this massive ship that sailed and housed a bunch of people. They believe they found it. What was it, in Turkey, I think? I think it was in Turkey.
I'm not positive.
But they believe they found it. So, I mean, that's just one more thing. Oh, there's never been an archaeological finding that disproves the Bible. We've never found anything that tells us the Bible isn't true.
Yeah, which is wild.
Right. I mean, over the course of how many years? That's insane. That we've never found anything that tells us the Bible can't be historical fact. So the fact that there's people who don't believe at least the Bible is historically true is in my opinion, you're just telling yourself you don't want to believe it. Which, granted, growing up, before I learned anything or took the time to kind of figure this stuff out, I thought Christianity and the Bible was just some hoax that some guy made up and wrote a book. But then I go online and I search and I find things and I'm like, there's no way this could have been like designed as a plan. And there's no way that like somebody started it and just this many people decided to continue after, thousands and hundreds of years. So, did you find the verse?
Yeah, we had a typo. It's 2 Chronicles 32:30.
Okay.
This same Hezekiah also stopped the water outlet of the upper Gihon and brought the water by tunnel to the west side of the city of David. Hezekiah prospered in all his works. So this tunnel is brought up. And I was reading some stuff that historically this tunnel, I can't prove this, and it's not. It's just a side piece.
But with history is you can't prove a lot of it. It's
right.
Evidence.
So I was reading some historical stuff that they believe the Hezekiah tunnel was also used for an escape route in a lot of battles. And so they were trying to find it because it was kind of a prominent area, and they were able to find it and bring it back to proving it with the Bible.
Nice. Yeah, so there's just a lot of things in here. I think you went to the Moabite stone was the last thing you didn't mention. The Moabite stone, 1 Kings 16:22 through 28, 2 Kings 3:4 through 6, the Nazarene or the Nazareth house, the Cyrus cylinder of Ezra 1 verses 1 through 11, pool of Siloam.
Yeah, I think it's Siloam.
Siloam. John 9:7, and Hittite tablets, and Joshua 11:3. So those are just some. I wrote some down that I found.
And
sure
this
there's
list
more.
this list is huge. Like there are
there's a
so
lot
many more. And they're basically what we're trying to prove to you is that there's all these historical sites that were proven biblically accurate.
Right. I mean, yeah. That was. I don't know how many there is, but it's like 7 or something like that. Next point. The cross references. We can go back to. Did you take the clicker? These are all the cross references. There's 63,779
It's insane.
cross references in the Bible. Like that alone is an impossible feat for any group of writers, let alone that it be, 66 writers across from 1,500 years for 63,000 cross references.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's insane. Not to
Find
mention
another book that does that.
Yeah, find anything else that does it.
And
Not
that
to
doesn't
mention
contradict it.
the fact that there's not. This wasn't like today's age where we have a printing press where we can print off multiple copies or we can look it up online. Dudes on this side, rarely few of them had the ones on that side.
Yeah.
Like that was all memory. So how can you cross-reference? It's insane to me that you can cross-reference things off memory. Like that's how devoted to the text the Jewish people were.
Yeah, it's like you put me on the spot earlier of trying to come up with cross references, and I could nail like some of the big ones about Jesus because Jesus is the center of our focus, right? For them, they were still under the old law. They were still a huge chunk of the Bible they had to know.
Yeah, very true. It's incredible, and I mean, unless you just think this whole thing's bogus, I don't know how you could deny any of that because it's incredible. We didn't hit on it before, but we should have right before I said this. So I'm going to throw it in there. It's the story with the pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had just gotten the opportunity to teach the high school class here last Wednesday, and I threw a little story together because I learned some interesting facts about a story in the Bible. So if you're following along with us, you can flip to Mark chapter 5, and if not, I'll read like 20 verses to you. So we can get how far are we into the podcast? Do you know? Does it say?
I think we're like 40 minutes in.
Yeah. Okay.
Crushing it.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, that's like perfect timing.
All unprepared and everything.
I know.
We're working out our bugs.
Get out the bugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure out the lighting.
We don't know what we're doing,
All right.
but we're doing it.
We're killing it, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna read like about 20 verses for you guys. So follow along with me. They went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. Is that how you say that? Gerasenes? When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons of his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell at his knees in front of him. He shouted to the top of his voice, "What do you want with me? Jesus, Son of Man, Most High God. In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out." Oh, it came. Oh, I thought it turned off. Where was I? Oh, when Jesus saw him from a distance, he ran and fell at his knees in front of him. What do you want from me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me. For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "The name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down to the step bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this to the town's countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, sitting there dressed in all his right mind. They were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people who had happened, or what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home and your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. It's a lot more reading than I was expecting. Okay, so this story shows up in two of the other Gospels. It's in Matthew and in Luke as well. In Luke, there's an interesting fact here that I just want to throw out there, which is funny. The demon-possessed man tells Jesus, "Please don't send me into the abyss." The Jewish understanding of like the abyss is what they would call the water, because they hate the water. The water does nothing good for them. There's no science to understand it at all. It's literally an abyss, because you go down, and most times you don't come back. So it's just bad. It's just bad. Red flag in their head, right? So they're calling it this abyss. And Jesus goes, "All right, fine, I won't send you into the abyss." So they go, "Can you please send us into these pigs?" And then Jesus sends the pigs into the abyss. I think it's hilarious.
That is a good sight.
So Jesus goes, "All right, I'll comply," and then sends them into the pigs out in the water.
Jesus didn't do it. The pigs did.
I love the Bible, because if you can read it in a different way than most people do, you can see funny things like that. And I just part of me is like, Jesus has to have a sense of humor. Not to mention, okay, this is 2,000 pigs. This did a hit to their economy.
Yeah.
That's not
This
good.
was someone's livelihood. Probably
Right.
multiple people's
It's a
livelihood.
lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously they're like, "Jesus, get out of here. You're sending our pigs into the water. What's wrong with you?" Right? So he goes, "Okay, fine." He's leaving, right? This is the first time they go to Decapolis,
Which is a Roman Gentile area.
right? It's a Greek area. So Jesus heals a Gentile of all people, and this is pretty early in the ministry. So this is I think this is a story that kind of gets forgot of placement, because this is well before really anything has happened. And so the man wants to come with him, and he goes, "Jesus, can I come with you?" And he goes, "No, I need you to stay and tell the people about what you've seen and heard." Mind you, if you read the New Testament, you see a lot of Jesus not saying that. He says, "Don't tell people," but he's looking at the Gentiles and he's like, "I could use it. Yeah, sure, this works." So tells him to get out. He leaves. He only comes back one more time. Do you know what happens the second time he comes back? Just by random coincidence.
I don't.
Okay, so the second and final time he comes to Decapolis is when he feeds the 4,000.
Right.
So
That is.
he comes back and he feeds 4,000 people, which means could be both, but one of these two options happened. Either simply 4,000 people showed up to Jesus' ministry because of this one man who shared his story, or he just had a very big part of it all, because obviously word can spread, but it had to start with this guy, which is insane to think that a crazy man on the beach told his story and now 4,000 people want to come up and hear this guy speak, which, granted, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
So I would kind of want to know what's going on too. So, but this is what's really interesting about the history of the Bible and proving that it's true and all this kind of stuff. So in this location, Decapolis, they built a cathedral hundreds of years later. And in this cathedral, a bishop, it's where the bishop lives, is what a cathedral is. And he's one of the first men to pen the Nicene Creed. And the Nicene Creed is, in the most simple way I can express it, is essentially like our Constitution, but for the Bible. So it's like just a set of things we kind of follow. It's got general ideas, most things that all Christians believe in and accept. That's the Nicene Creed. It takes theories and truths of the Bible and puts them on a piece of paper, and it's like our Nicene Creed. So the fact that all this came from a man in a story of the Bible and still is relevant today, over hundreds and thousands of years later, like another one that's just like, I can't believe that's, like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think your point is that just this one encounter changed the trajectory of an area
Right.
for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a Roman Greek area, that would have been, for one, it would have been infiltrated by Roman military, so Jewish traditions would have been out the window.
Right.
and also being a Greek dominant area, they would have been into Greek mythology. So
Right.
it changed everything in
with
there.
Herodiasm, all those kind of things, theater, all this other beliefs, and yet this story it holds win at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
and I don't think you mentioned it this time, but I think when we were talking about it earlier, something you said that I liked was that you got to be mindful of the impact you have in your area.
Yeah,
Like
it's very true.
one person's encounter, which changed the whole trajectory. We're not going to have that much of an impact, I don't think, in our daily life, but you could. You never know where God's going to use you. But that's something to be mindful of.
People within the last few years that we would count as pretty. What's that evangelist's name? Do you remember his name? Darn, I can't remember his name. Oh, this stinks.
Yeah, but either way,
There's evangelists that reach out to hundreds of thousands of people, and today with our social media pulls on things, like
it's
you could
easier
be
than
a
ever to
single
get information
person.
out.
Yeah, it's so the moral point of the class was your story matters. But this isn't a sermon or a class, so we're just talking about the Bible and its truth. So, but I mean, it proves that like let's be serious about our story and what God does, because things like this could happen.
Yeah.
You never know what simply talking to somebody might do.
Yeah.
No idea.
We're kind of running short on time. Do you want to jump to prominent historians, or do you want to nail something more on the... I think we had like 3 or 4 topics left, but...
Yeah, I mean, we can quickly run through them. The Babylonian Talmud references Jesus and his life. He was such things were in this was that he was born of a virgin, he performed miracles, and he was executed as a blasphemer. Like those are all things that are aligning with the text of Scripture, and the Babylonian Talmud is a pretty credible source as well. So we hit this point already, but many people who saw Jesus rise from the dead were willing to give their lives based on that claim. Again, that's where I put my faith in, is in those people, not just words on a page.
Yeah, he wasn't just another rabbi. I mean, most rabbis, if they were executed out, are not following him anymore.
Right. You got to remember, too, that Jesus wasn't the only one to claim to be the Messiah.
Yeah.
So this was kind of a thing that, I mean, you would expect some doubt with people. It's like, come on, you're like the 5th guy this week that's told us that he's a Messiah. So it's like, why would I listen to you? Then Jesus does miracles. He does all this other stuff. He rises from the dead. And it's like, how can you deny it?
Yeah, because he could prove it.
Right, he could prove it. My final point is just evidence from my life. I find the truth of my life to be the point to a God that, through my religious findings, is to find that Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. I've done studies on Buddhism and Hinduism and not exactly the Catholic, but what's the...
Yeah, because you kind of come from an interesting background where you grew up in Pentecostal, right?
Yeah,
so
I
you grew up with some kind of religious background and then chose to not follow God at all, right? You would say that you were...
I would say I pushed him away,
right.
forsaked it.
You had no desire to follow a God.
Right.
And then started studying into what you wanted to look at as following God, right? So you've covered everything.
Yeah, I went to like the facts of like, there's got to be something out there that created something. Like there's no way this world is put together by some random coincidence, and that the world holds together by this exact formula that if it was slightly off, the whole universe would be in chaos. It's like there's got to be something here, right? So I look at that and I started studying the religions, and I found that there's a lot of good truths, that like good moral things in a lot of them that could help your life improve. Like Hinduism, their big thing is to rid yourself of all desires, which is pretty helpful. I mean, if you can say, you know what, I don't need sugar, or I don't need these things that cause harm to my life because that's what I want, then it could help you. You know, you can work through some stuff. So there is some like good things in the other ones, but ultimately, as I look through history and just applying like prayer and certain things like that I grew up around but never really buying into, I just found that I can't deny this anymore. And I think the more I deny it, the more I'm just kidding myself.
Yeah.
Prominent historians, are you hitting these?
Yeah, so I threw a couple historical figures that we would say are undoubtedly true, like that we put in history books, that we teach our kids that are true.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to point out, and we'll walk through, is most of these people, these historical figures, they only have a couple sources to verify that they were true figures.
Yeah.
So we'll start with Tiberius Caesar. He's one of the ones that has the most sources, and he also wrote a lot about himself. So we have a lot of his own sources that didn't include. But he was an emperor around the time of Jesus. So we're looking at around the same time frame, 14 to 37 AD. He has 10 sources that weren't himself. And these are all sources within 150 years of their life.
Okay.
So there's other things written about them later.
Right. Yeah.
But just within verifiable time frame of 150 years of their life, he has 10 sources. Pontius
Which would
Pilate.
be like the most credible sources.
Right.
It'd be people that
they're gonna be
might
the
have come
closest to
across
him.
him, probably
Yeah.
talked to him potentially. Those kind of things.
Yeah. And I didn't date every source that was pulled.
Yeah.
But I imagine a lot of them are around his lifetime, I would think, was probably closer to that
Yeah, I would think
while
so.
he's
Within
living.
like 40 to 50
That's what I'm
years.
thinking.
Because that's
But-
when all like the Gospels are written. I would assume
Right.
it'd be when people.
But this is all with a 150-year time frame. Then Pontius Pilate, 26 to 36 AD, he has 5 sources, 5 credible sources. Alexander the Great, we see him all over history books.
This is one that I'm surprised about. It's 5 sources.
5
for this
sources.
guy.
Right. And this
we
is...
teach them all over the place.
Yeah, so this is 323 BC. So this is a long ways back.
this is even
This is
before.
even harder to prove that he's true, that he was a real person, but we teach him as a real person. I don't think anybody listening would say Alexander the Great wasn't a real person, right?
Yeah.
5 sources. Socrates,
That's crazy.
470 to 399 BC. 3 sources.
3 sources for Socrates. I mean, there's people who like love this guy.
Yeah.
There's no telling if he even really existed
And-
if we're comparing the validity of both.
That's my whole point. These are people that we teach as true figures. These are in history books. We have whole societies built around these people. 3 sources.
That's wild. That's crazy.
Jesus Christ, 30 AD, 9 sources. He has almost as many credible sources as Tiberius Caesar,
Which he's like, no doubt he really existed. Like,
and
I
he
don't
was
know
a credible, authoritative figure, right?
I
Tiberius
don't know if anybody
Caesar.
would say he didn't exist. Like, I can't think of one
Right.
reason.
And these two are at the same time historically. 9 sources and 10 sources.
They also lived around the same time.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense to why they're pretty close. I would think Jesus had more sources than 9. What are the sources?
I would have to pull the sources list of what they all are. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Probably like the Bible is one kind of idea.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense why there's 9. I was like, there's got to be more.
yeah, there's a lot more, but these are what I don't know if the right word is historians or scholars, but one of those two is smarter than me. They have deemed that are credible sources. So this is not religious figures saying this is credible. It's not
Right.
me saying these are credible sources.
Unbiased
This
opinions.
is whoever is in charge of writing our history books.
Gotcha.
This is what they've decided as credible sources,
Gnarly.
which I think is just wild. I mean, he has more sources than almost double the sources of everybody else on the list.
Yeah. How can you get around it, How far do you want to play games?
Yeah.
That's really the question.
So at the very least, you got to recognize that Jesus Christ was a real figure.
Yeah, let's forget faith for a minute and let's just accept the truth that Jesus did live. And I know a lot of it is probably because Christians just haven't acted right within the last couple of years. That are a lot of people's belief in Jesus and the Bible is all over the place because we've done a poor job representing what he's told us to represent. So that's something we got to do better at,
Yeah, it's easy for me to say because I am a Christian, right? But I recognize that Christians are people.
That's also true. Yeah.
And we should hold ourselves to a higher standard, right? And I think the world holds us to a higher standard, which is good. They should hold us accountable to what we believe.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't act on what we believe. And that's where I think we've done Jesus a disservice, done God a disservice, and we don't take it as seriously as we should.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about the Jewish culture earlier, and their devotion to memorizing text is unfathomable to me. Like, I could never memorize 4 books of the Bible and be able to quote it by you saying words.
If we could a couple thousand years later, like they could have,
Yeah.
I think people's reaction towards Jesus would be totally different today.
Yeah. I think it's a call to action for us, We got to do a better job. And I think I would hope all Christians would agree with us here. That if you are listening to this podcast and in any way you have been, treated unfairly or noticed, judgment within us and those kind of things, like I hope that our message is to tell you that's not how we're supposed to be. And my prayer is that those people will apologize and grow. But as we see in even our rabbinical times and with the Jews and the rabbis, I mean they struggle with a lot of the same things. At the end of the day, we're humans and we're gonna have problems. I think this is where Christ's grace needs to be something we nail down, though. So as long as we can figure that one out, I think. Or the first commandment, love, is the one we gotta nail.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up Hebrews 11, and I have a quote that says, chapter 11 is about broken people looking to God. God does great things through us when we trust him. But the first sentence of that is about broken people looking to God. That is what a Christian is. We are broken people looking to God. Yeah. And if you look through chapter 11, it's full of people that made mistakes.
Right.
Full of it. That God...
Was that where it lists the righteous people?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that's crazy to me. I read that and I'm like, how? How does that even make any sense?
And then you look
at myself.
Look at your own life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And that's kind of what I wanted to bring up is we're all just trying to do our best, man.
Yeah.
Do your best.
We're working on it. Hopefully we can figure some stuff out before Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
Do him a little proud. But at the end of the day, it's not our actions and the things we do that gets us to heaven. It's Christ's sacrifice above all else. So there's nothing I can do to meet that. So, but I love him enough to try.
Yeah.
I hope that this was good for you guys listening. I
think it was a mess.
Yeah, I know it's kind of all over the place, but facts are kind of that way. There's not really like a method for facts. You just kind of say them.
Well, this is like our second time studying together, not studying together, but teaching together.
Yeah. Right? So we're going to figure it out. There's going to be some meshing here and there. I don't know what we're going to do next. We might jump into the prophecies next, those 300 prophecies, or we might jump to a verse-by-verse study. I don't really know what's going to happen next, but we hope to do these bi-weekly, and I hope that this was informative to those of you who are Christians and just want to learn more facts about the validity of the Bible, or for you guys who are listening that might not be Christians and looking to experience or mess with some religions and see which one you want to follow. I hope this was informative. I hope that this was something you can bank on, and please fact check us. Like any sermon we teach, fact check us. Like, we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to misguide you. We want to be good shepherds. So the hope is that you guys will hear this and learn from it, I guess. So
yeah,
that's what I got to say.
We'll wrap up there. See you in the next one. Thanks for listening. If you have a topic you would like us to cover, email us at armoredpod@gmail.com. And please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.